Welcome to Musicians Roundtable. I'm Jeffrey Goodman, and today I'm really pleased to be sitting with Ben Salfield and Bobby Rootveld, and they are in Cornwall, England, and Bobby and his wife Sanne van Elst, if I'm getting the name somewhat right, are in the midst of a concert tour in that Ben and his concert organization are sponsoring. So Ben, could you give a brief introduction of Bobby and the music, and then we'll go from there?
Yeah, it's great to see you, Jeff. It's Bobby and Sanne are a lovely couple. I met them some years ago at a music festival that they ran in Nordhorn in Germany. And we became sort of firm friends really quickly. And it's really good when you can work with people and have that kind of friendship where you get on really well. And I started listening to their music, and I was just really touched by how together they were with everything. As man and wife, you expect that they're going to be able to perform well together, but there was something special about them. And I particularly got interested in their work that they've been doing with Jewish music, because obviously, you know, something about my background. And when they said they would like to come to the UK this year, and they're playing 4 concerts, including they're finishing in London on Sunday, and I really wanted to be involved in that. And I was just really impressed with the ideas they came up with, and it's the program that so far on the tour has really gone down, you know, incredibly well with the audiences.
That's wonderful. So Bobby, could you introduce us to the Jewish Music Restoration Project, the music from the ghettos and concentration camps from the era of World War II that you've been involved with, and how you go about it and what's happening with that now?
Yeah, well, during the Second World War and already in the period before that led up to the war, people were creating music, as people are always doing, and Jewish people compose music in which they put their emotions, their fears, their anxieties, looking back at how beautiful life was before the war, hopes for the future, fears for the future, songs about the loved ones they missed. And they played it for each other in the ghettos, in ghetto theaters, in the streets. They played it to each other in the concentration camps. And a lot of these songs were either written down or remembered by survivors. And at some point, because of my family background, I got interested in this music. My family background is a background in which more than 100 family members were murdered in the concentration camps. And being a musician, I was also interested in the music from this period. And when I realized that there was music from the camps and the ghettos, I just got interested in what kind of music this was. And along the way, I found out that a lot of this music that was composed was lying in archives or was still in the heads of people who survived. And nowadays, we are living in a time in which most of the survivors are passing away. Soon there will not be survivors anymore. And this is the moment to talk to them about which music do you remember. And sometimes survivors remember entire songs, the lyrics and the melodies. And sometimes we find songs in archives, and then the paper is like shredded, it has holes, because you know it's old paper. The notes disappear sometimes, so we do restoration. We have notes and texts, or only notes, or only texts, and we try to do a restoration in which we try to imagine ourselves being the composer in this situation, in which the composer is, for example, in a concentration camp like Auschwitz. And then we try to imagine how he would have written this. We analyze the music, we compare it to other music of the same situation, and try to fill the gaps as good as possible to have a complete song again, which can be performed. And I think this is very important because soon the survivors cannot tell their stories anymore. And the way to keep these stories alive can be either by books, for example, biographies, autobiographies of the survivors, but it can also be the music, and music is emotion. So with music, you transmit emotion. So it's a wonderful way, if you play these songs, it's a wonderful way to transmit the emotions these people had to the audience and to make them conscious of what the people in the camps or in the ghettos went through. And it's something which is very important, I think, not only to remember the past, but also to learn for the future.
I think one of the valuable things that Bobby does as well with this music is that, for instance, in tonight's concert, he was performing some of the, or they were performing some of the stuff in, for example, in Yiddish or in Dutch or whatever language, and then singing an English version as well, so that we could understand also the words, not just the emotions. And they've done that, I know, in several other countries and languages. So I think that's a really good way of making it accessible to a bigger audience.
Definitely. And I'm kind of wondering, as you describe this, are there any occasions where some of the songs you actually have the name of the composer, or is it mostly anonymous?
Both. We have quite a lot of songs where we have the composer. At this moment, we are doing the restoration of 30 songs composed by a duo, and we know who they are. We know the names, and so we could trace back a bit about their history. And these 30 songs, we are doing the restoration at the moment. Sometimes it's completely anonymous. Sometimes you think it's anonymous, but through other ways you find who the composer is. And it's always a puzzle. It's a lot of research. It's puzzling. You have to find out a lot. You have to check, double check, and sometimes you find out something unexpected. And the weirdest things can happen in this research.
I'm sure. Are some of the scores, for example, a score for example, for piano with the vocal line and the words? If that would be probably a pretty complete version. It sounds like also that there are many times that you have partial bits of things as opposed to a complete score with lyrics and melody.
Yeah, it's quite often partial stuff, and quite often actually it's not piano, but it's a melody line and chords and lyrics, like a lead sheet. Because if it was, for instance, composed in a concentration camp, people would sometimes be allowed to bring a guitar, or more often a tenor guitar, a 4-string guitar, into the camp. But of course, they couldn't take a piano to a concentration camp. So quite often, it would not be piano, but it would be a smaller instrument.
It's a very rough analogy, but as I hear you describing this, it reminds me of some things that Ben has told me about his research of through museums, finding different parts of very old lute music, lute duets that have obscure origins, and gathering them and then trying to connect them and finding, discovering things that had not been discovered before.
Yeah, it is a completely parallel. It's the same methodology. The difference is that I think, well, first of all, Bobby's work is more valuable in many regards because it's a new history and there are still people alive who remember this. But also that there are people in his research who can actually remember the songs, whereas the stuff I've been, say, discovered a few pieces of music that really are, nobody's heard for 500 years. So it's lovely to hear, but it isn't important in a sort of, I don't know, moral context or something like that. So I'm full of respect for what Bobby does.
So one thing that comes to mind that I'm wondering about is, have you found or followed any particular musicians or composers that you've been able to trace their personal history and their history as musicians and during that time of the pre-war and the war?
Mhm. Yeah, several, but the most interesting, in my opinion, are Johnny and Jones. Johnny and Jones were a duo from the Netherlands, swing jazz duo, and Holland's most popular musical act in the 30s. And they went on tour all over Europe. They even performed live for the BBC radio, and they were Jewish. They ended up in Westerbork concentration camp, and they wrote songs about the camp. And at some point, even the camp commander, the Nazi SS camp commander, Gammeger, loved the songs. So Gammeger did something that only happened one time during the Second World War. Gammeger sent Johnny and Jones back to Amsterdam to record some of the songs they wrote about the camp, to record this in the studio. They recorded the songs. You can, till this day, hear the recordings on YouTube. They are really beautiful songs, but they are always like very dark. They sound like happy swing jazz, but every lyric has a black, dark double meaning, a very sad meaning. They recorded the songs in the studio. And the recording engineer said, "Hey, listen up. I will hide you. Don't go back to the concentration camp. You can be sure that you will die." But Johnny and Jones went back to the camp because...
That's right, I'm being attacked by my cat.
Yes. So Johnny and Jones went back to the camp because their wives were held as hostages by the camp commander. The camp commander heard the recordings. He was satisfied. And a few weeks later, sent Johnny and Jones on transport to the death camps in the east. Johnny and Jones first were in Theresienstadt, then in Auschwitz, then in Ohrdruf, in concentration camp Buchenwald, Sachsenhausen, and then finally in concentration camp Bergen-Belsen, where Johnny died 2 weeks before the camp was liberated, and Jones on the day that the camp was liberated. It's a really sad story, their life story. And you can also hear it in their music, because they were already composing beautiful songs before the Second World War. They were this big music act in Holland. And if you hear the songs in the beginning of their career, there are swing jazz songs happy about subjects that like love and stuff like that. And the songs get towards the war. The songs are talking about the mobilization in which the army people have to get more training because there's danger from the east, from Germany. There are songs like, let's get as much food in our basement as possible in case a war breaks out. So the songs get more and more dark. And then the songs they composed during the beginning of the war, when they still not were in the concentration camp. And then finally the songs in the concentration camp. And you can follow the whole lifeline and their moods and their emotion and what's happening to them in their songs. It's really, truly amazing.
And so are you performing some of the songs as well?
Yes, yes.
In fact, he performed some of them, or they performed some of them tonight. And last night, and we'll do tomorrow, and on Sunday. So it's an incredible experience, you know, when you see people's faces and when they hear the stories and their reactions to the music. It's incredible.
Absolutely. Well, I want to thank you so much for introducing and discussing this absolutely remarkable and I think extremely important project, because it's not only music, but it's history. And you're really creating an archive that I don't think would ever have been created by this focus on the music, from the music that may have been composed and played and performed during those times. So it's absolutely wonderful. I'm looking forward to you sending over some links to your website, and I know that you have some wonderful recordings on YouTube. So I want to thank you again for joining Musicians Roundtable, and thanks, Ben, for introducing us. I think that there will be tremendous interest and benefit to so many from Bobby and Sana's music and this whole project I'm really, really happy to and feel fortunate to be a small part of this, as far as sharing the nature of the project. And I've heard some of the music a little bit already before we spoke, and it's music itself is really exquisite, inspiring, and powerful, even without the context that you have shared. So it's important stuff, and I wish you wonderful best rest of tour in Cornwall, and thanks for joining us today, and I'm sure we'll be in touch over time in the future.
Yes.
It's great to see you, Jeff.
Thank you. Yeah.
See you again.